Good evening. Welcome to tonight's On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers. Once again, tonight's show is 2 hours long and live. So if you have any questions for our guest during the show, text them to 87778 with the word EDGE, a space, and then your name, location, and your message. And we'll try to pick up on any that really hit the mark. They're all charged at standard rate, so why not get texting? In tonight's show, I'll be talking with a guest who is extremely knowledgeable about Britain's two King Arthurs, yes, really, where the Ark of the Covenant lies hidden in Wales, whose language the Welsh are really speaking, and how it and our true history has been repressed for generations for possibly very sinister reasons. To reveal all, I'm joined by a man who has spent many years studying ancient records, scrolls and tombs, writing books, and badly upsetting the establishment. He is Alan Wilson. What a show we've got tonight. Alan, welcome.
Thank you.
So, you've been studying this subject, or these subjects, because there's more than one really, but they're all sort of interlinked, for, I think you said since 1953?
I know. I started looking at this casually, just as an off. Someone had gone on weekend or something in 1956.
56.
I was joined by my colleague who really urged me to put it on a firm footing in 76.
Okay.
Because he wanted to launch the search for Arthur II. He said, we can do this, let's do it.
So over 30 years, seriously?
Oh, yes, yeah.
So you've been looking for... I always thought there was one King Arthur, and that he lived in Camelot, with his round table and so on, but you're telling us that's not the case.
It's fairly well known that there were two, and I think it was well known certainly in Welsh record. Reverend Williams wrote a book in 1734 saying there were two, and you've only got to look at the history. He's supposed to fight the Romans, and then he fights the Anglo-Saxons, or their ilk. That would make him 250 years old. So it's fairly obvious that he's two people. Right. If the first real clue on this comes in the most famous of British manuscripts is the Harleian 3859. And there are king lists. And list number 4 starts off with Mascin Wledig, who is Magnus Maximus. Now it's well known that Magnus Maximus is the only son of Crispus, who's the eldest son of Constantine, the great emperor. He married twice. His first wife, Kindrick, daughter of Ryden, and their eldest son was Arthur.
Right, this is Arthur I.
Arthur I.
Arthur I, okay.
Magnus, with Andragathius, the Romans called this Arthur, invades Gaul in 383, which is not 6th century, he is 4th century. Okay. And they successfully conquered the whole of Western Europe. And they did in Geoffrey of Monmouth, which we try not to use, and Brut Lucilio, other records. They fight a great battle with the Roman Emperor at Sassy. Well, Sassy is Soissons. And that battle did take place.
That means 60, doesn't it?
No, it's Soissons, Sassy, I don't know. Either way, the battle was fought. Gratian loses. They chase him down to Lugdunum, Lyons, and they killed him. Right. So Arthur did fight against the Romans.
He fought the Romans and he was killed by the Romans.
He moved on, well, the whole of Western Europe and most of North Africa went over to Magnus, and he became emperor. He was actually the right emperor, because he was the only son of the eldest son of Constantine the Great. Okay. So he was the right guy. They were finally defeated in the Balkans, 2 big battles in what is now, or was Yugoslavia. They're changing it now, aren't they?
Yes, Croatia and Slovenia. A battle on the
Sisika River, Sisa, and a battle at Poetovio. And Arthur had to withdraw back, and a surprise move by Theodosius, the Emperor of Constantinople, captured Magnus at Ravenna. And
My namesake.
That was the end of him.
Theodosius.
So, but nonetheless, there was an Arthur I, who then returned to the UK, and there are some solid records. There's a solid record of him in the UK. An Irish prince named Ruth, R-E-U-E-T-H, invaded North Wales. In the sort of medieval records, he's King Ryons, and in the Welsh records, he's Rita Gower, but it's the same guy. He invades Snowdonia and Gwynedd. Arthur's march to the battle is recorded in an ancient Welsh poem, and there's a grave mound for old Ruth up on Snowdonia, where he was put out for the battle. He lost
Arthur won, Ruth nil, was it?
And yeah, that's known to be 367 AD. So we've got an Arthur I. So
Right.
that's your beginning. We knew there were two quite early on.
So what was Arthur I's territory that he ruled?
It would have been, well, they seem to have had a Tairn. A Tairn is a monarch, and under the Tairn were a number of regional kings. Certainly, they don't appear to have used currency too much, but it was one captured Roman legionary in early Roman times was worth 20 cows as a slave, that sort of thing. But nonetheless, his territory would have been the Midlands of England, Warwickshire and across there, Shropshire, maybe as far as Leicester, and North Wales, Powys, because there wasn't a Wales in England then, it was just Britain.
Yes, but they're not South Wales, because I believe there was some connection with Glamorgan.
Yeah, he had a brother who is buried in Lanhilleth, and that's in the Songs of the Graves, very clearly outlined. You go along and there's a great big grave mound right on target. He would have been titular over most places. They'd have all said, he's the boss, you know. So that's the way it would have worked. But there were kings in Wales, obviously.
Right.
Where's the kingdom? It's not a principality, it's a kingdom. You've got to get that in your head.
Kingdom. Of Wales.
Yeah.
So, Arthur I,
yes.
Where's he buried?
The account of the grave of Arthur says that he's in the great ancient graveyard of the British, where multitudes of the illustrious of the British are buried.
Is this Atherstone in Warwickshire?
Well, there's a place called Old Bury, you see.
Old Bury.
Old Bury place. Arthur's Toyn. Arthur's
Stone.
Arthur's Stone.
Yeah,
Arthur's Stone.
I've been there.
And there are multitudes of huge grave mounds in the woods there. And they've turned it into a nature reserve for bird watching now.
Yes.
And that is his place. You see, there are names around that. There are place. They seem to be strange Anglo-Saxon, but one reads, granted free without taxation, in perfect Welsh. Another one reads, free grazing for sheep, you see. And so these names, and then there's another Arley, you know, ploughland of the court, Arley, you see.
Okay,
and
so by following the ancient records, you found that there were two King Arthurs. You found the grave
track them down.
Of Arthur I.
We think so, yes.
Okay, and he was...
He died around 400, we think.
400, this is AD.
80, only.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
But then there was a later Arthur.
Yes, Arthur II. Well, Arthur I has a son, Tathal, Theodore, right?
Yes.
He has a son, Teutlin, Theodorus, right? Theodorus, right? He has a son, Teutfald, who is Theodosius, who became king, big king. He defeated the Saxons after a terrible massacre.
Right.
His son was Tudrig, Theodoric, who's buried at Mathen, has been twice excavated, the wound in his skull. His son is Moirig, which is Morris.
Yes.
And we know where he is. And his son is Arthur II. So 6 generations down the male line, we've got Arthur II.
Right.
And
okay, and what was the kingdom of Arthur II? Was that the same kingdom, North Wales?
Well, I think you've probably got a copy, but he was pronounced and proclaimed King of Glamorgan.
Glamorgan, yes.
He's over in Brittany. His knights are there with him, and it's in the Brutes of England, which are the official histories, medieval histories of England. And they say that he's crowned King of Glamorgan. So everybody in England knew where he was.
So why is it then that we have all this sort of weird King Arthur industry, and there's people saying, oh, he's in Glastonbury and somewhere, you know, in Cornwall, and they've mixed them all together. If it's so in the records, why has no one else found them? Well,
religious and political, you know, manoeuvring for various, you know, reasons. If you look at the name Glastonbury, Glaston's in Breton and Cornish means place of oak trees. Glastonbury in Welsh is the scarlet oak. And there is a mention around 800, I think, 70, give me a few years, in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle of a Glaston's or Glastenic. And it's very clear that's in the Midlands. Now, it's 200 miles from the oak trees there you're referring to.
Okay.
But in Caradic of Lancarvan, writing about 1120, something like that, and I think it's Matthew of Westminster, there are 10 notations of where Arthur is buried. They're referring really to Arthur I. The great scraped out ditch off his dyke, the great ancient highway or whatever, that's the Watling Street running from London to the capital at Uriconium, right?
Okay.
And other references all point to it being the Midlands. You had, they have a festival every year for singing in North Wales. The Saint there.
Oh, the Eisteddfod?
Yeah, no, there's an international one. Well, the saint of that place used to pop across to Glastonbury. Well, it's just across the border from Atherstone. It's a direct line. He wouldn't have gone all the way down to Somerset.
So this is Arthur II we're talking about now. So he was also
Arthur I. Arthur II is buried in Glamorgan.
Oh, he's buried in Glamorgan.
Yeah. We found in the life of Illtyd and in Nennius, there's a strange story of a burial. A ship arrives at a river which is named the Awenny River. Well, it's easy to find the Awenny River. And it's a place of smooth ridges. Well, the smooth ridges are the great sand dunes that are there. And runners used to use them, long-distance runners, to train themselves up and down the sand dunes in modern times. And there are other place names associated. And what happens is that St Illtyd is sitting at his cave. And the ship arrives, and there are eminent people in this boat that puts out from it. And they've got the body of a dead man, who was really some big guy. They bring it to Illtyd, swear him to secrecy, and he buries the corpse in the cave. Now, the cave exists, it's still there. And in the cave, you go in about 20 yards, there's a great ancient pit being dug out, and it's very, very hard rock. You try a drill on it, you'll have trouble. It's about 10 feet long, about 3 to 4 feet wide, and about 4 feet deep.
I think we've got a picture.
So there is a grave there.
I think we've got a picture of the cave, but
yeah,
I've got so many.
You've got so many pictures from me. I've overloaded you. I'm well aware. Sorry,
we'll try and find the picture of the cave and
nonetheless,
and pull it up.
Two young men from the Korean college. It's a film college.
Okay.
They went along and they were filming in this cave, filming the grave pit.
I think I found it. It's number 24. If we could have 24, please.
Yeah, okay, let's go.
We might get it up any minute.
Yeah.
So this is where Arthur II was originally buried?
Yes, and they, above the thing, they panned across the side of the wall of the cave. And it's something that happened in America with us as well.
Right, there it is, that's the cave.
That's the cave entry. It was sealed up, and a man from Cardiff went there in 1886, and he got a local guy who worked in the quarry, and they carefully put little bits of dynamite in and dynamited the sealed wall up. Actually, you get a bit of stalagmite and stalactite there, and that had flowed down and really sealed it, so they blew it apart. He made a good record of what he was doing.
And there was some writing then on the wall?
And well, that was found by Colin Games and Blair Urquhart, who did the filming in the cave. And it's not until you get back and you look at it and say, oh, there's writing there. And it's covered with stalagmite, you see, so again...
It's very old.
It's very old.
So what did it say?
It's in the Welsh ancient British Common alphabet, and it says, this is the place of the bier of the highest ruler. Well, it doesn't say Arthur, but it's damn close.
But you're saying that later on they took the body, after they prepared a special site for him?
Yeah, then one of the two accounts, one's in Illtyd and one's in the Marbles of Britain in Nennius, says how the body is later taken out to a church and placed near or in this church. We reasoned where this church would be, because just up above, a straight line up the river above the woods, and there's the ruin of St. Peter's Church. So one account then again says, your stone there became a mystery. So we say, hey, there's a stone, you know, we've got to look for this. So we started rooting about. This church had been abandoned about turn of the century, 1900-ish.
Okay.
So we got hold of the Church of Wales and we said, do you want to sell it? And they said yes. So we bought it. So we now owned it, so we could root about quite free from any hindrance. And we did find a stone.
And what did the stone say?
It's actually, either it's nonsense or it's lousy Latin. It says Rex Artorius Fili Mavrici, which would be...
King Arthur?
Yeah, but it should say Artorius Rex in good Latin. But we don't know who carved it. Perhaps it was some soldier or idiot who didn't know what he's doing. Because there had been a great catastrophe in Britain, which we'll come to later if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely.
No,
yes.
Mavrici would be Myrick, his daddy, you see.
Oh, right, okay.
So we knew we were on, and this could be the church. And our business is writing books. We don't... that's expensive enough, right?
Let me show the camera some of the books that you've written. This is Moses in the Hieroglyphs.
Yep.
This is the discovery of the Ark of the Covenant. We'll come to that in a bit. This is Artorius Rex discovered. Is this the stone that you found?
Yes.
On the cover here?
Yes, it is.
And here's another one. The King Arthur Conspiracy. As you can see, weighty tombs, all of them. And I don't know why, but I've also got one in Polish.
Well, we published another book with Adrian Gilbert, and we've very few copies left, but it was published in Italy and Poland and God knows where.
Which I think you said
so
that was
that's one.
something like, what does it say? Something like Noble
It's supposed to be the Holy Kingdom, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
My Polish is a bit rough.
I never liked the title of Gilbert again.
I can swear in Polish, but that's about it.
Oh, man. Where were we, anyway?
We're talking about Arthur II and the church that you bought.
Yeah, so we knew that we had real trouble with the establishment. We were getting trouble with capital letters, believe me.
Tell me why. Tell me why do you think you were getting into trouble?
Well, firstly, we're finding a number of sites, not just this one. We found a number of sites. They're all over the top of the Rhondda Drift and elsewhere. So you got 7,000 million ton of coal underneath. That's not wanted. And the other reason was that we had a Prime Minister named Callaghan, and then we had a Speaker named George Thomas, and they were in with a man. I never heard a good word about him anywhere, Julian Hodge, who owned the Bank of Wales. Well, yes. When they were in government, but when the Labour Party was not in government, Callaghan and Hodge were directors of the bank, you see. And they got into all sorts of land. One land thing, I might as well say it, they bought rubbish land up Lantrisant. And when it became necessary to move the confined giant Royal Mint out of London, put it somewhere, wow, lo and behold, the only place to put it was right on the land owned by the Prime Minister and the Speaker of the House of Commons.
Okay, allegedly.
No.
Not allegedly.
Late at night, about 20 or 30 Labour MPs kept things going on a trivial debate. And about 2 in the morning, Callaghan and Thomas got up and they apologised to the House of Commons. And the apology was accepted, so it can never be discussed. You played Monopoly at all? Well, they've got a get out of jail card.
OK, but it doesn't explain why they...
That's one reason. Okay. The other reason is that obviously we're upsetting the academics wholesale. You see, just before the 1939 war, the senior archaeologist at Cardiff University was a very famous man, and he didn't care too much about Wales. He wanted to go and dig up Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan. Sir Mortimer Wheeler, wasn't it?
Okay.
Remember him? Before your time.
I think so.
He was all over the TV many years ago when I was young, so that's a long time ago. Anyway, he's digging up in 1939, war is impending, and across the plain, it's in his book, he sees a lone figure riding a pony towards him. It turns out to be a gentleman who was a second lieutenant in the Indian Army. And the Indian Army, rightly or wrongly, was regarded as low class. This guy spends his 3 weeks leave with Mortimer Wheeler and enjoys his leave and goes away, digging up Mohenjo-Daro. After the war, with 5 million people pouring out the army and a couple of million out the navy, there was mayhem. He arrived at Cardiff University and said, I was on the dig at Mohenjo-Daro with Wheeler, you know. Wow! And they gave him a job. Of course, problem is he didn't have any qualifications, only a 3-week holiday on the dig. And he stayed there for 19 years. He took Cardiff University over to Somerset, digging up Cadbury Hill, claiming it to be Camelot, you see?
Ah, right, okay.
But Camelot in the records, if you read who's the guy, Mallory. Camelot is said to be in South Wales. It says it very clearly. And the main residence of the Glamorgan Kings was just 4 miles north of Cardiff Centre. And there was a wedding held at the castle in 1453, so it was still in use.
So Camelot was in Cardiff?
It's got 2 names. It's called Keyboard. Key is mutually together, and board is table. How about that?
Round table.
Just below it is still Yellow Wells Farm. It was the Yellow Fort, Camelot.
Camelot.
Camelin, you see.
Yeah.
Spelled Melin one way is a mill, but Melin the other way is yellow.
Okay.
It's a yellow fort.
So this was who? This was Arthur II, was it?
So Cardiff University have made real idiots themselves by digging up Somerset for 7 years when it's on their doorstep. So they love us.
Sitting on top of it.
They love us.
So is this Arthur II who had Camelot?
Yes.
Not Arthur I?
I know.
So Arthur II had Camelot, had the round table.
Well, keyboard, keyboard. It was, even in Norman times, it was not, you couldn't, it was the royal cantref, you couldn't tax it. It was not taxable.
This part of Cardiff?
That area.
Is it still like that?
A cantref is like a small county. They split the country up into cantrefs.
Like a hundreds or something?
Yeah, the field is still there, and you can see the ruins, the mounds and all that, and the lady, she's very friendly, with us, and lets us go on it and look at it. And we don't dig anything.
Okay.
We don't interfere with it. We're not qualified.
All right, well, talking about upsetting the establishment a bit more.
That's part of the upset. Now, I'm not going to go into the rest because it'll...
Well, I thought I might just sort of poke you in one direction a little bit, and that is if these ancient kings of Britain that you've turned up with all their genealogies and everything else, presumably have descendants, don't they?
Yes.
So where does that put the Saxo-Goth-Coburgs? Oh, sorry, the Windsors.
I think it sort of puts them in the 4th division.
So do you think that might be a reason why you're sort of quite unpopular with the establishment?
What has happened, if you get a history written before 1714, Percy Enderby wrote a great history for Charles I, you'll find that the history of Britain starts with the invasion of Britain by Albine, about 1500 BC. Okay. The Welsh have the same histories. In the Brutes of England, the medieval official histories, they also have the story of Albine. And the second invasion comes about 500 BC with Brutus coming to the Trojan area.
So Brutus isn't a Roman name, then?
Brutus is alleged to be the first consul of Rome, who then went off to, he left Rome and went for other people.
This isn't the et tu Brute Brutus, is it?
Oh, no, that's Caesar. We're talking about 500 BC, Caesar's 50 BC. So Brutus apparently et tu Brute, Caesar had an affair with some lady, and Brutus is his son, but doesn't know it. No, we don't need that.
Okay.
So anyway, you'll find these histories were British history, but about 1714 they decided they were rubbish and to be abandoned, and one of the main reasons given was that the Trojan War never happened.
Because Troy never existed.
Because Troy never existed. Or it existed in the mind of the poet Melesigenes, Homer, right?
Homer, yes.
So as Troy never existed, British histories were rubbish. And there was a guy writing this from Oxford in 1891. I've got his book. Simon had gone out and dug up Troy in 1876 and proved it was there.
Because it was found, wasn't it?
And this guy's saying it's a fiction. Yeah, it was found already. So once Troy is found, you say, well, hang on, they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. They've got rid of our history.
They said this history can't be true because Troy doesn't exist.
That's right. So we decided, no, we would switch and we'd have a look at... See, it's no good putting the roof up and decorating the walls unless you put the foundation down. So we decided to have a crack at the history of Albine and the history of Brutus.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're going to go for it. Albine's history is very basic, and it tells a very plain story. He's got an enemy who is he's Diocletian. He's got an enemy named Labana, and he rules 33 provinces. His daughters have ruled some of them, and so on and so on. And his daughter one of his daughters marries his enemy Labana. They make peace, and Labana has made a big raid on his territory, and there's all this detail. Now, Leonard Woolley, who was probably one of the greatest archaeologists that ever lived, went out and dug up the tombs at Ur, where the third dynasty of Ur...
Which is Iraq.
Iraq. Yeah. They were the big dynasty of antiquity. And the third dynasty was the biggies.
Oh, right. We're going for a break now. Sorry, Alan.
Great.
If you'd like to text in your questions or comments for Alan Wilson, why not do so now to 87778 with the word EDGE and then your text, and we'll see you very soon. Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest, Alan Wilson, who has already upset the royal family, the Cardiff University, Callaghan, the ex-Prime Minister's family, Julian Hodge, the famous Welsh banker, and possibly other people. So, Alan, the city of Ur, we were in Iraq.
Yeah. Well, what the great Leonard Woolley found was that there were a necropolis, and the greatest tomb in the necropolis was 2 stories above ground once and 2 stories below ground, like a palace. The upstairs was where the people administered the estate of the tomb, and the downstairs were the votive rooms and the burial room. Dungi was the greatest of the emperors. British annals call him Diocletian. He had a big enemy named Labana. The great king of the Hittites, first big one, was named Labana. He did attack Dungi kingdom, and Dungi did rule 32 different provinces, as stated in the Brutes of England.
So in the ancient English history,
they have a point.
There's interesting stories about what's going on in Iraq.
Yeah, that's right. Now, how could they know this? Now, it gets better because in 1939, they found 3 ships in the mud of the Humber River. So they said, Viking ships, put them in the museum, Viking. Now, about 8 to 10 years ago, somebody said, well, let's carbon date some of the timber. And they came up with 1500 BC, which is nice for the migration of Albine. Now,
right.
There is more. In the votive area of Dungi's tomb, they found a table, and on this table there were little metal and glass objects, balls like spheres, like comets, I suppose, and bulls and sheep reclining and standing. When they dug up the Lexton Mound at Colchester of King Kinvelin, and don't ask me for a date, I think it was just about 1938, they found a votive table of metal, and they found on it little statues of reclining bulls and reclining sheep and little balls. Now, that is too big a coincidence for me. And what it means to me is that there's a little bit more to the Dungi Diocletian setup and the Brutes of England. They've got something. Now, the other thing is, if you read Homer, Homer's assisted by his bailiff to recover his kingdom, and he says to the bailiff, where do you come from? He says, I come from a big island out in the Western Ocean. So what's it called? He said, Syria.
Surrey?
Exactly. Where do you get the word Surrey from, you see? And yet it's there, Surrey. The other little point to make is that in the Welsh records, they say the language that prevailed in England was the language of the Isinglas, the Iceni people. It's not German, it's not Anglo-Saxon. And a French guy wrote a book, he'd done some studying, and he concluded that the English language is based on ancient Chaldean. He couldn't work out why. Well, there may be a little bit more to this than meets the eye. The Brutus legend, the same sort of thing. We've got a heck of a tie-up, and we'll come to that right now if you want. Now, what would you like me to proceed
now, if you like.
I mean, you know what you want me to talk about, so what would you like me to proceed?
Well, let's talk about the 10 tribes of Israel.
Right. Fundamental to British history is a language and an alphabet. Now, we've got an ancient British alphabet, and we've got the ancient Cymric language.
And that's not the alphabet we use, which is an Arabic alphabet, isn't it?
Julius Caesar describes the alphabet, and he says it's similar to the Greek. Ammianus Marcellinus describes the alphabet, and he says the Greeks got it from the Brits. And so we've got old references. Strabo is fulsome about the scholarship of the Brits, as you know. He says they speak Greek in their colleges as good as the Greeks in the Lyceum University in Athens. This alphabet is preserved in Wales. Now, the reason for it, it's British. Welsh history is British history. It belongs to all of us. The one part of Britain that wasn't really overrun at some time in the centuries and sometime destroyed by Irish people in North Wales or others flooding in was southeast Wales.
Okay.
Immensely powerful. Glamorgan, Gwent, bits of Brecon, and parts maybe the Red Cantref, Gloucester to the west of the Severn. Largest place called Essulug. The Romans called Essulug Silures, they call them. It means abounding in prospects. That's where the alphabet and the ciphers were preserved. Now, the preservation of them is extremely valuable. We found a person writing in 1897, a publication in 1848 from Oxford, a publication in 1852 again, and a publication in 1906 saying, isn't it strange, the Welsh British ancient alphabet is identical, or near identical, to the old Etruscan alphabet and the Pelasgian alphabet of the Aegean and Turkey.
Okay.
Now, we've got an alphabet going back in that way. Now,
we've got an alphabet going east, haven't we?
going east, well
coming
I
from
would
the
think
east.
it came from the east,
Okay.
right? This starts you thinking because the name of the 10 tribes of Israel, as recorded by the Assyrians, was the Khumri, Khumry.
Which sounds very familiar to me because it's on all those cars that drive across the Severn Bridge,
That's right.
isn't it?
Well,
the word Cymru.
Since about 1900, they've dropped the KH and replaced it with a hard C, but the correct spelling up until 1900 was Khumry. That's the 10 tribes of Israel. They're on Egyptian things. Now, when Austin Layard...
I've got to stop you there.
Go on.
Because this is good. So, are you saying then that the early Brits were in fact the 10 tribes of Israel?
Yeah, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove it. Well, they didn't get lost. They knew where they were. Nobody else did.
They were hiding in Wales.
That's right. Well, in the whole of Western Britain, actually. Probably Lancashire, Cumbria, up to Strathclyde and so on. But the point is this. When Austin Layard dug up the archives of the Assyrian emperors at Nineveh, and he did this in 1846, the first find was 25,000 clay baked tablets, all their writings and archives and deal.
Yes.
Packed them all up, sent them to London British Museum.
I've seen them, I think.
Later, an Arab general, I think his name was Mahmoud, but he found another 5,000. When these tablets got to the British Museum, they were looking at them and they suddenly, wow, some of these have got the ancient British alphabet. No,
there's a coincidence.
There's a coincidence.
What are the chances of that?
Well, wait a minute. You see, you've got the alphabet right through Turkey. The Assyrians now have it in correspondence probably sent to them. So we reasoned this. If the alphabet stretches back in that direction, how much further does it go? Now, Jim Michael in Kentucky was researching with us, and he's into the American inscriptions. We managed to get a picture in a magazine of a Dead Sea Scrolls scholar examining sort of Dead Sea Scroll stuff. Now, of all the hundreds
these the copper ones you're talking about?
Of all the scrolls, all of them are on papyrus or whatever, but 2 are on copper.
Yes.
The 2 that's on copper are not in Aramaic, and they're not in the same alphabet. Different alphabet, entirely different, they think, language. Professor Carl McCarter said he was going to decipher them, he never did, and he said, I don't know what the alphabet is, I don't know what the language is, but it's Hebrew. No, actually, that's inspired, because we thought, if these Cymry of the Assyrians, the 10 tribes, are the Cymry of Wales, and that is the route we're following back, you know, then it's highly likely that this could be Colburn. Of course.
Which is the language, the Welsh language.
The Welsh alphabet.
Yeah, the Welsh alphabet. But
so it was abundantly clear. So I went out to America and I was with Jim for a few weeks, and he said, and I knew what he was going to do. I'm going somewhere Friday night, he said. So Friday night we drove through all this rain and we got to a Baptist cemetery, big college, and they actually had got some photographs of the copper scrolls. Because the people who got hold of these, a small group of scholars, had hogged them and nobody else could get at them. And it wasn't until Robert Eisenman, a distinguished scholar, said, look, we've had 40 years of nonsense here. Everybody's entitled to see...
Trying to decipher them. They haven't been able to decipher them.
But they were making the right mess. A fellow named Malik, a Polish priest, had got hold of the copper scrolls, and it took him 40 years, and he didn't get there. But...
Hold on, Polish priest.
Malik.
I think you need to read this one.
He needs to read that one. I think he's dead now, so I'll have to send him one up there.
Okay.
But the point is that we managed to get this now, we looked at it. Now, the photographs must have been taken in the middle of a thunderstorm on a dead dark night with a box brownie camera, because you couldn't really see. They deliberately didn't want you to see it. But I just counted the number of letters, you see. There were 17 in that line, and then his sort of version, he was trying to twist them into Aramaic letters, and I'd say 14, because he joined 2 together. And another one, you'd have 20, and he'd have 25. And they weren't Aramaic. But we managed to see some of it fairly clearly. In 2.5 hours, we translated 5 lines, quite clearly, quite definitely.
Into Welsh?
Yeah, and he spent 40 years getting it.
And what did it say?
It's about the That bit is about the organisation of the 12 tribes of Israel, how they are arranged, and presumably what land they're to occupy, you know. Now, the interesting thing about the copper scrolls is this. They had to cut them apart to read them. They couldn't unwrap them. So they cut them in little 2-inch strips around and then laid them.
Are they written on just one side?
They're on one side. But the thing is, when you look at them, all along the top and all along the bottom are signs of holes. And there's tear marks, right? A hole with a rip mark.
So they were fixed to a wall or something?
They've been nailed to a wall and someone's ripped them off. Well, if you think about it, Solomon put golden shields, plates, up on the walls of the temple.
In Jerusalem?
Yeah. These were stolen by Shishak, Pharaoh, right? And his son Rehoboam didn't have enough money, Solomon's son, so he put copper ones up. No.
To replace them?
Yeah. Now, the temple was later ransacked by, certainly by Nebuchadnezzar and whatever. It looks to me, it's a guess, right, as if some pious person has ripped them off the wall, rolled them up, put them in a jar, and that's them.
And hidden them in a cave? In Qumran, was it?
In Qumran. But it is the same alphabet. There's no doubt at all, and it can be deciphered. And then we found that a Croatian explorer had gone to Egypt, and he'd found a mummy. And this mummy was wrapped in a 32-foot long, big broad piece of cloth, you see. And it's plastered from one end to the other in the same alphabet.
In Welsh?
Yeah, well, it's common alphabet, so I'm assuming.
In a Welsh mummy?
So, no, this is in Zagreb.
I tell you what, it's right now I wish I was Welsh.
Yeah, well, no, well, you probably are. I mean, everyone's got a bit of everything. My father from the northeast of England, my mother's from Cardiff, and her antecedents are from Anglesey and West Wales, and, you know...
Well, you were born in Cardiff,
I was born in Cardiff, yeah, unlucky.
It's not that bad.
No, it's not that bad. Anyway, the point is, where were we?
The Egyptian
Zagreb
mummy,
shroud.
the mummy
Now,
shroud.
getting to the Zagreb shroud, you couldn't get it because they're behind the Iron Curtain. We've been at this a long time.
OK. When it was part of Yugoslavia.
And finally, there's a lady, a very distinguished lady in television, Diane Sawyer, in America. She got us copies of the Zagreb shroud. So we managed to amass this stuff. And we decided that it was best to sort of work our way backwards slowly. There are stones in Scotland, Wales, and England which have this alphabet on them.
OK.
So we'd worked on them. They'd read out. You know, we'll go and read the ones in Italy now. And so I remember writing to a Glyn Daniels, a professor, I think, at Oxford or Cambridge. And I said about the inscriptions in Valcamonica on a stone. And he wrote back and said, there are no inscriptions on any stones in Valcamonica. So I sent him a photograph. I wish this correspondence to be discontinued. You know?
Well, he just didn't want to know.
Didn't want to know.
Is it because also that, you know, they're a bit snobby about academics that they'll talk to? And you didn't have all the right kind of antecedents?
I got some sympathy. I talked at length with a professor in Swansea, who was a classics professor. He said, no, I've got to keep my wife and family. I need a job. They've got themselves in a situation where they all march in step to the same tune. And nobody dares to break ranks. This is the problem they've got. And there's not enough dialogue. I can spend all my time at 76 doing this research. They can't. They're lecturing students, preparing papers, they're marking papers, they're holding seminars. They can't do research to the extent that people like us can. And therefore, we've got something to offer them. Now, I want to be quite clear. Myself and my colleague have always been ready to give them copies of what we do and to cooperate with any of them.
Well, your books are full of photographs of evidence,
yeah, but I've got masses, we've got masses of, you know, the complete translation of an Egyptian stela, see, you know, so
which is in Welsh?
They can have it anytime they like.
And what about the hieroglyphs?
Well,
where
were we? We're talking
about the mummy's wrappings.
Now, what has happened, the 10 tribes of Israel are taken away from Jerusalem, right? Solomon's temple's there.
Yes.
King Ahaziah of Judea, 2 tribes, he's had a successful battle with the Edomites, and he's going to attack 10-tribe Israel. And he's warned, there's a famous verse in the Bible about a passing bullock stepping on a thistle. He's the thistle, you see. Don't do it. Well, he got hammered. His army is destroyed. He's tied behind the chariot of Jehoash, the Israelite king, goes to Jerusalem, pulls down 200 yards of the wall, and Jehoash then takes everything from the palace, and he takes everything from the temple.
Oh, including the scrolls, everything?
Including the ark.
Oh, the ark.
Aha. Because you've got to realise it's in Kings and Chronicles in the Bible, and it's in Flavius Josephus.
Oh, wasn't there a family that was looking
Correct.
after the ark
That's right.
for generations?
The family of Obed-Edom. He took them as well. There'd be no point in taking the family of Obed-Edom if he didn't take the ark. So we said, hang on, the ark's gone.
So the ark left the temple.
It's gone north to Samaria in 790 BC. We know. And
you found all the evidence for this, presumably?
Yeah. Well, what we did, we trying to translate the Etruscan stuff. No, they went north of Samaria. 687, Sennacherib, the Assyrian emperor, is murdered by two of his sons. The heir, the older son, has a civil war with him. The 10 tribes take off and they cross the Euphrates, going west through Turkey.
Right.
Second book of Esdras, chapter 14, right? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They are going through Turkey, and the Greeks pick up on them, and they call these Cymry the Cymroi. Cymroi, Cymry, right?
The Welsh again.
They get, well, the Brits.
The Brits.
Yeah, I'm a Brit, you know, we're all Brits, come on. They get to the Dardanelles, half the people stay there, and the other half go to Italy.
The Dardanelles are in Turkey, aren't they?
Yes, on the end of Turkey, where the little gap to go up in the Black Sea.
On the Bosphorus.
The Bosphorus.
Yeah.
Where the great city is.
Yeah.
And
named after Constantine.
Yeah, that's right, Constantinople. So, anyway, by looking at the Etruscan writings, we found we could read them. And they're very convenient in that the Etruscans had a habit of, after each word, they put a dot. So you can tell the length of the word.
So they invented the full stop?
I think so. Well, certainly between individual words. Mm. And we read...
Oh, after each word they put a dot? So
yes.
I misheard you, OK.
So you know that's the length of the word.
That's the word.
Yeah. And it comes out, you know, ye olde English ye type of thing. There is an element of that in the language, but you can discern it. You can discern it.
OK.
So we started off with little things on, say, a wine jug and little teeny inscriptions, and we worked our way up to the big stelae, you know, big stones plastered in it.
And these are stelae from that part of Turkey, are they?
No, they're in Italy.
They're in Italy now?
We're in Italy now with the Etruscans. We're in Italy. We've moved from Britain to Italy, and we're on our way to Turkey. We're going back in time and distance. There is a famous bronze tablet. Now, you've got to realise bronze is extremely valuable in that day and age.
So you're not going to write a shopping list on it, are you?
Well, they reckon that the writing on both sides is a menu.
Today's special.
Oh, that's it. It's like going down to Ali's Takeaway and seeing it in gold. You know? It's ridiculous. But there are 3 sections to it. And the first one says how the people are in a place where there's great pestilence and storms, and they're unhappy. And they are taken and led away from this, and they follow a little cabinet riding in a cart.
So this is the ark?
I think so. And they come to a place where they are content and happy, and that's where they live. The second section says they're happy where they are, but they're taken away forcibly, right, to a place where they are unhappy, and to get there they follow a little cabinet that rides in a cart, you see. I'm going
to read a couple of texts out now, just so that the audience can get into the room, as it were. Paul in Warrington. Hello, Paul. He says, is the Ark of the Covenant a person, supposedly Mary, or is it fictitious? What's your view? I think he might be mixing that up with the Holy Grail, isn't he? But
I don't know.
But you think it's it's been pictured in...
We believe it is as in the Bible, and we'll come to that, and I would like to answer the gentleman's question as we go. OK, well,
there's a chap here called Russell from Llantwit Major, probably pronounced that wrong.
Russell from Llantwit Major, yes.
Yes, in Glamorgan, Wales. He's reminded me it's in Wales. Yeah. Well done. He said he's followed Allen's and Barham's work for many years, and it's great to see this finally revealed to the world.
Thank you. Excellent.
Excellent. OK, so there we are. We're in Italy.
By the way, in Llantwit Major, there's a 9-foot-high stone that weighs 7 ton, and on it it's got King Ethael. Ethael is one of the 2 sons of Arthur II. It's got Illtyd, who's the man who buried Arthur, and on the bottom it's got Athmael, Iron Bear, the Welsh name of Arthur. It's no good looking for Jesus in Wales. You've got to look for Iesu, I-E-S-U. It's no good looking for George, you're looking for Gwaerid.
Okay, the
you
Welsh
can't look for Edward, you've got to look for Iorwerth.
Yes.
And so on. So, but Arthmail, Iron Bear, that's him.
Iron Bear is Arthur, is it?
Oh, and it's on this, of course, it's a 9-foot stone, it weighs 7 ton, that's why you can't find it. Anyway.
Okay. So we're in Italy.
We're in Italy.
We're looking at this bronze
tablet. And it's got 3 stories. And the third story is that they again take off and they go and follow the little cabinet.
Because of the pestilence.
And, no, the pestilence is the first one.
Yeah.
The second one, they're forcibly taken away.
Okay.
And the third one, they're unhappy where they are, so they take off and they go and they follow the little cabinet in the garden to the sea. To the sea being the Dardanelles, I would think.
So now they're...
So we think that's the journey from Egypt under Moses, the deportation under the 4 Assyrian emperors, Tiglath-Pileser III, Sargon II, Shalmaneser V, and Sennacherib.
Yes.
See, in one stele of Sennacherib, it says in one of his deportations, he removed 200,120 people. So these are not small groups.
That's a huge
diaspora. Well, they went through Asia Minor. The Greeks call them the Cymri, see?
Yes.
And they were like a tidal wave. Nothing could stop them. Half go to Italy, half stay there.
Like locusts, in a sense.
Oh, right. Takes some stopping. So the other half stay there, and then they come to Britain in 500. Now, we're still translating. We've moved from Italy. We're in the Aegean now. On the island of Lemnos, a stele was found in 1876, and it's plastered with Cauldron writing. And there's a guy holding a spear, big guy with a spear. And it tells how the people have gathered there, and they're under...
On the island of Lemnos?
Right. Well, in the British records, they say the people gathered on the Isle of Ligotia, which is Lemnos.
But surely that's further east than Italy.
No, it's south of it. Yes, we've moved. We're going back in time. We're going back. They've now got the Dardanelles. Get them on.
Okay.
They gather in the records. It says how they gathered their fleet at this island. And here's this stele, and it tells how they've been directed by the god, and they're going to sail together to a great green island out in the Western Ocean. That's what it says.
So they sailed out of the Straits of Gibraltar through there and
to the UK.
To the UK.
No, they picked up 3 or 4 other groups en route. One with Corinus, who goes to Cornwall, and so on. So here is a story matching the British record of a gathering on an island to sail to the UK. And it's the secret is this language and alphabet, perfectly preserved.
So the evidence is all there if you just look for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stelae along through Turkey, and they also are in the same alphabet. So you got it right through the Aegean, right through Turkey. The Syrians had it, Austin Layard found it, and then we got it on the copper scrolls.
Have any academics challenged your interpretation of these alphabets, or this alphabet and this language?
No. Would you get in the ring with Mike Tyson?
Anytime.
No, we don't want a slanging match. We again, we've always been willing to cooperate. They're running for cover, and I think, as I tried to say, they've got to keep a job. They're not in a free society where they can say what they like. John Collis, a professor at Sheffield, said, look, there's no Celtic people in Britain, there never were. Because Celts in Britain, it was invented in 1714. No Celts in Britain.
So it's made up. Our history is made up.
If you get rid of the history of Alboin and Brutus and everything else, you've got to give the people a new name, haven't you? And so they said, well, they're Celts.
Are Anglo-Saxons? What about the Anglo-Saxons?
Well, the Anglo-Saxons are not Celts, but they stuck it on the Scots, who were Picts, and they stuck it on Picts, who were from Scythia. They stuck it on the Welsh, and they stuck it on the Irish. But the Irish history says they come from the upper regions of the Tigris. Well, hardly Celts.
No.
This Celtic business is a load of... It's complete nonsense. John Collis of Sheffield University, at a conference, said, the professor, that there were no Celts in Britain, and he explained this. And was he unpopular? He wrote to me and said, hey, I'm keeping away from this.
Alan, we're going to come back for some more shocking news after the break now. So if you'd like to text in your questions or comments, why not do so now? And we'll see you very soon.
Yeah.
Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest tonight, Alan Wilson. Alan, this is just getting better and better, I've got to say. So here we are, the 10 tribes of Israel have been forced out of their original homeland. They've come through Turkey, Italy, now they're leaving the Med, heading for a big green island. What happens next?
They catch you. No, what happens next is that we have established a firm trail, and a trail of the people which matches the history.
With evidence. With
evidence. If the alphabet's right, the translation's right, our histories say they gathered on an island of the Gotia,
Lemnos.
Lemnos. And it all seems to work together and fit very, very well.
So where do they land in the UK?
Well, certainly one group landed in Cornwall. Another group appeared to have landed in South Wales in the Aberavon area. There's a famous story of one of the local kings opposes them, and they finish up having a single combat, which will save a lot of lives on both sides.
Champion combat. You set up your champion, I'll set up mine.
And he throws this fellow down, and the invader, Cymric, or whatever.
The Cymry, yeah.
And there's a place called the top of the fall and the bottom of the fall, where he threw him down the hill, and other place names. It appears to be there. It's certain, I think, that one group would have landed in Totnes in Cornwall, Devon area.
Devon, yeah.
I would think so, yeah. That's very well sort of, I mean, it's so solidly thought on there, I wouldn't doubt it. But another major group would have come up the Severn to South Wales. That's fairly obvious.
So, OK, so you've got very large number of people, very large number of people from the Middle East settling down in their new land.
That's right.
Bringing their language, bringing their alphabet. Now, obviously, eventually, although they still speak Welsh, or they did for a long time, not so much now, the alphabet changed, didn't it? Because they started using the Arabic alphabet.
Started using the alphabet.
Wasn't there some other suppression of the language?
Well, I think it's Richard III, or Richard II, prohibited the use of writing materials in Wales. And certainly Henry IV made it illegal for you to own writing materials in Wales. And this has sort of gone on and on. When Caxton brought printing into London, 1474?
I'm not exactly sure
84, 74, one of those. Well, they prohibited publishing in Wales till 1692.
So for 250 years or so.
The damage was done, like, to an extent. But the worst thing is in 1846, they had what the Welsh call the treachery of the Blue Books. And a parliamentary commission came and did the usual parliamentary thing, went back with a pack of lies, as it were, written in the Blue Book. And the English government sacked every school teacher in Wales. Now, you've got to realise all the Welsh population spoke Welsh, and about 10% also spoke some English. And they replaced every school teacher in Wales with an Englishman.
Who couldn't speak Welsh?
Who couldn't speak Welsh. So you had English teachers who couldn't speak Welsh in every school, and a class of kids who couldn't speak English.
So it's sort of cultural genocide, really, isn't it?
Correct. The perfect term, cultural genocide. They've been at it for years. The people up in North Wales preserved it more because whereas there are probably more Welsh speakers in South Wales, there's a much greater population. Whereas in North Wales, it's more of a common language between the smaller population.
Yeah.
And that's where they set up the universities of Aberystwyth and Bangor first, and Cardiff and Swansea followed later. And they weren't set up with grants from big, rich people or anything like that. They were the pennies collected from mine workers and farm labourers, and that's how they set up tiny universities. And so it was a bit orientated towards the north, you know.
Mm-hmm. But the language survives.
Yes, and in 1896, Professor Sir John Morris Jones, he wrote a thesis, and he showed how the structure of the ancient Egyptian language was identical with the rather complicated structure and syntax of the Welsh language.
So when you say
he was onto this.
When you say the ancient Egyptian language, you mean what, the hieroglyphs?
Yes, hieroglyphs he's aiming for. Now, you've got to realise that if these people were in Egypt, Moses took them out, and the trail is in into Palestine, or Israel and Judea, and it's then up to the north in Syria, then it's through Turkey, and there are plenty of inscriptions in Turkey, all the way through. Then it's in the Aegean, then it's in Italy and Switzerland, right here. And then it comes to the UK. So you've got a lovely trail, and if they started off in Egypt, it should surprise no one if there isn't a link there.
Well, Alan, we've upset lots of people already.
Yeah.
So I think it's time that we upset a few more. If the 10 tribes of Israel are the Welsh,
Yeah.
who are the people who are claiming Israel today?
Well, yeah, I wish you hadn't, but we will. Right. In, I think, the 8th century, I do know something about it, right? The king of the Khazars, which was a Khazar empire in southern Russia, over towards Bulgaria, taking in the Crimean and a huge area, and they had about 22 subject nations under them. The Khazar empire was ruled by the great Khan of the Khazars, and he was Bulan. Bulan was under pressure by the caliphs and sultans to become Islam. The Pope or Bishop of Rome and the Greek church wanted them to become Christians. So he had 4 or 5 delegations come to see him. One was a delegation of Muslim people, one was a delegation of Roman Catholics, one was a delegation from the Greek church, one was some Greek Platonic theorists, and another delegation was Judean people. And they thought it over, and they decided, we're not going to become Islams, we're not going to become Christians, we're going to stick to the Jewish religion. That'll do us fine. And they all became, and they started adopting Jewish names, Obadiah and all this sort of thing. And so the Khazar was a Mongol Finn nation in that area of Eastern Europe, big nation, became Jewish by religion, not by race or descent.
Okay.
No, it's not my figures. It's figures from numbers of scholars and others, and God knows who. Arthur Koestler, a Jewish person, wrote the book, The 13th Tribe. This is the 13th tribe. They're Jews by religion, but not by blood.
So you're saying that those people who are now in Israel are very largely descended from Khazars?
The calculation done by others, not by me, is 19 to 1. Sephardim Jews of the old Jews who were thrown out and separated, 1 in 20.
Okay, so how come they don't speak Welsh?
Who?
Well, the ones who are...
Well, they lost the language. They went to Babylon, they came back, they'd lost their language.
So where did Hebrew come from?
And in Jesus' time, they were speaking Aramaic. They weren't speaking anything but Aramaic.
So where did Hebrew come from?
And then they wrote the Gospels in Greek and translated them to Latin. I mean, it's a mess.
Okay.
It's a resurrected language. In a way, they tried to recover it.
What, you mean Hebrew's a resurrected
Yes,
language?
I think so, yeah. It looks like it. All I can tell you is what we found.
Yes. It seems odd that they don't speak Aramaic in Israel, doesn't it? If that was the ancient
Well,
language.
they're speaking Yiddish, aren't they? Which is the Eastern European version.
But Hebrew is Hebrew, there's a classical Hebrew, isn't there?
Yes, but what its provenance is rather uncertain. You know, it's history. I can only tell you what we've done.
Yes,
and we're open to discuss it and show anybody what we've done and how we do it.
Okay.
So we get now to Moses bringing them out of Egypt, and we thought, well, why not? I mean, Champollion's aged about 22 or 3. He's got Ippolito Rossellini with him, aged 18, claiming to be a professor. And they go to Egypt and they come up with this, and they say, well, we can't find the word in Coptic, and that's because the word has changed so much over the generations and centuries that it's no longer recognizable. So once upon a time it was CAT, but now it's DOG, but it means the same thing. Okay. Then they said, we can't find it in Coptic. Well, we'll look for it in Aramaic. We can't find it in Aramaic, we'll try it in Hebrew. And if we can't find it there, we'll guess. So
that's what they did?
That's what they've done.
So we'll get back to hieroglyphs in a minute.
Yeah,
I just want to read you a text here I've got. I don't know what... it's important to know that if you send long texts, the ends get cut off, and I don't get to read them, unfortunately. There's a standard text size. I'm not sure how many characters that is, but that's what they're limited to. So someone has texted in and they said, I'm fascinated by this topic. How can I find out more about Alan's work? I would love to be involved in this research. Could my phone number be passed on? Well, no, because we haven't got it. But there is a website, isn't there?
We got a website.
Can you read out your website?
It's
www.
King Arthur Researchers. I forget what it's bloody hell.
Just Google Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett. I'll spell Baron Blackett for you. It's BARAMBLACKETT. So Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett.
It's King Arthur. It's King Arthur Research.
King Arthur Research.
No, it's King Arthur's Legacy.
King Arthur's Legacy.
I don't even know the name. It's King Arthur's Legacy. That's what it should be.
.what? .co.uk?
.co.uk.
.co.uk. King Arthur's Legacy. .co.uk. Possibly.
I'm so tied up here forgetting to...
So moving right along then. So let's talk about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, sure. Well, what we did, we realised that we had an authentic history and it was very, very real. So there are 13 ancient tales in Wales and they're called the Mabinogi.
The Mabinogi?
No, they've restyled them the Mabinogion, which means children's tales, which has shielded them from the church, I think. But the Mabinogi seems to mean origins. The first 4 are tales of origin, and that means the origin of the solar system, the universe. You get things like Maloluk is the flood, and he marries Bronwyn, white breast-breaking waves, and her brother is the great thunder god, Bran, and so on. And the flood and the breaking waves are receding, and they have a son who's Gwern, means a swamp. So you start to see that it's flood creation.
Let me just interrupt you for a second to say that we're going to put up Alan Wilson's website on the screen in a moment, so if you get a pen and paper, you can write it down.
King Arthur's Legacy.
So the Mabinogi...
So we realised that these were genuine tales saying things about storms and comets coming into our solar system, Venus going out of orbit, which is matching the ancient observations of Babylonian and other observatories. They say, oh, these guys didn't know what they were doing because Venus didn't do that. It did.
Okay.
So we then had a couple of other stories which really are how to read the stories. You follow me? It's all wound up with names, but they're really talking about planets and so on. But the last 3 are important, and the last 3 are Peredur, son of Evroc. Peredur is Steel Shirt. He's the planet Jupiter. There's Geraint and Enid. Geraint is Mars, strength. And the other one is Owen, and Owen is Orion. When you realise their solar stories, you can realise that we've got constellations in the heavens, and the planets move through the constellations because they orbit in the sun. My colleague asked me one day, he said, what's the name of that mound down there? Blydiad. I said, it means the ferocious warrior, you see. And then a big penny dropped, you see. We don't look at Greek and Roman things. We look at ancient Hebrew as far as we can, ancient Egyptians, and ancient... What's the other one? Anyway, Babylonian sort of names. The names that they gave to the star that we know as Hercules, our constellation, is the ferocious warrior. Then we realised there's another big mound called Tumbalum, the he-goat, Capricorn. And we're in another place, there's a shrine hidden in a little teeny valley. I don't know if 10 people know what it is in Wales. And it shows the Egyptian goddess nuts stretched out in an arch and other things.
So you're saying that
that's Sirius. So we knew we had these 3. If we had 3, we could triangulate and find Polestar. And bang, right on target, we got a standing stone. Now, I don't know if there's 70 or 80 of these mounds, and they're big. They're not little. They're monster mounds of Earth. And we realised that these mounds form a gigantic star map on the landscape.
Well, we've got a map. We've got a picture of that. If we get a 42, it might take a couple of minutes, Alan. So keep talking about these star map mounds.
So we found that right across Glamorgan and Gwent for about 45 miles and about 30 miles north or so. No, that's the central point. I'll come on to that. Keep it up.
Okay.
Now, in the one story, it tells how Arthur gathers the army, and we know where he gathered it, down at Merthyr Mawr, and they fight the Battle of Baden. Now, no scholar can find the Battle of Baden on Munit Baden because it's on the map. It says Munit Baden.
Let's go to a couple more. Let's go to 43, 44 and so on. There's a little group of them here.
Yeah, well, see the mounds. On the way back from the Battle of Baden, he's going home, you see. Well, that would be going home to this place north of Cardiff, because Baden's in the Moystake Valley. There's a mound.
There's a mound.
Yeah, and it's got a name.
Keep going, we've got a few of them.
No, it's the same one. Anyway, halfway along, they stop. Yeah, and there's a strange game is played. That's in a park. I don't think that's a true mound. And this strange game is played is called Guidbull. There's one there, see, with houses built around it.
Behind the Land Rover, there's a mound.
There's a mound there.
Okay.
That is one of the outlying stars of Orion.
What you're saying is that on the ground in Wales
there's a huge
mounds, man-made mounds, placed in the same positions as a map of the stars.
You got 3 up on the Garth Mountain at the Penturk, and they're the belt of Orion. And you find all the others. Then once you find 1 or 2, you can actually go out and look for the others. You can go and look for them and spot them.
Okay.
Big ship Argo is traceable.
So I think we've probably seen enough of those now. So you looked at these star maps.
Well, they're much bigger than that, most of them. Anyway.
Yeah, you looked at these star maps.
Yes.
And what did it tell you? What did they tell you, these star maps?
Well, we had a little diagram up there, and what happens is there's another one.
Oh, yeah.
This game of Guidbull, star knowledge, is played between Arthur and Prince Owen. And they've said, oh, it's chess. It's not. It's star knowledge. 3 games are won by Arthur, and a rider comes each time to warn Owen that his soldiers are being defeated. 3 games are won by Owen, and another rider, each time a rider comes to tell Arthur his boys are in trouble from giant ravens. Now, this mirrors an ancient...
This is a story in the
Mabinogi.
Yeah.
And you can find the site where this took place, because Arthur's servant is a red man on a red horse with a red cloak. And, you know, you got these white horses on things on hillsides in England.
Salisbury
well,
Hill.
we've got a red man and a red horse and one in Wales. But nobody writes about that. Keep quiet, you know. It's there, giant thing. That's where this game takes place. Each of the 6 riders has got an emblem. One's got an emblem on his helmet or his shield of a serpent. Another the camel leopardus, the leopard. Another has got a lion, Leo, you know. And each one has a solar or stellar emblem. If you go to the Singenit Valley, for 4 miles along the side of the valley, right along the hilltops, each side, and 2 miles across the top, is a ditch and a mound. Can't be for water because it goes up and down. And there are 6 monuments laid out around the side, 3 on each side. And we realised the pole star is in the Singenit Valley, that these are directions to the different serpents, Leo.
So this is the central star, then?
Yes.
This mound is the central.
And therefore this was really central to us building the star map, Singenit Valley. People say, well, what are the Singenit mounds? You know? Singenit is not St. Kenneth, the son of Gildas, it's the Senate place of the nation. It's more important than you think. Mm-hmm. So we were able to look at this, and we realised that, I heard when I was a child, there's a legend in North Cardiff and north of Cardiff, and most people knew it when I was young, and it's a great wooden chest is buried containing a great treasure, and it's guarded by 2 Cigrangoa, giant ravens.
Which looks very much like the Ark of the Covenant, which has got these 2
Well, I didn't realise that for years. I didn't, and people, until recently anyway, were going out on a Sunday afternoon, there's sunny weather and that, with their metal detectors, having some sandwiches and looking for it. And 2 brothers up in the Moystake area, on the road to the Rhondda, like, they were out about 14 years ago, and they sat down to have lunch, and they had their metal detectors, and they put the metal detectors down as they sat down. One had left his turned on, and it went beep, beep, beep. They thought they'd found it, but actually they'd found £90,000 worth of Roman coins. The point is they were looking for this giant treasure chest. Now, it sounds awfully like the Ark, doesn't it?
Well, it does to me, because the pictures of the Ark are with 2 kneeling angels on the top of the Ark.
Well, they're cherubim, and that's a ferocious winged monster, not angels, believe me. Anyway, either way, we reasoned that if we found Leo and the star Regulus, there's 2 first magnitude stars in Regulus, one's Denebola, one's Leo. If we found Regulus, that emblem of the tribe of Judea is the lion. So let's go for the lion. There's a huge mound right on target. Now, Anissa bull means enclosure or special place of the notch.
This is the name of this place,
BWL.
is it?
Yeah.
Let's get a picture of that up. This is
But
55, please.
okay, but Anissa Bill, BYL or BIL, means enclosure of the ark. Now, the Welsh are famous for misdirecting the English and misspelling it, believe me. The central area of it is called Golwg.
Right,
And
here we go.
Golwg,
This
there
is
it
a satellite image of this is Leo then, is it? This is the mound.
That's the site of the mound. It's a giant mound of Regulus in Leo, you see? It's not regular. The central area is Golwg, which means place of worship. Now, somebody in antiquity has built a stone wall right around the top. Now, why you do that on a silly little hill in
Without a
Wales?
gate?
No gate. No, originally no gate. Anyway, the other thing is, if you look at it, you can see that it's too smooth, that it is not natural.
Can we, oh, we've got
There's
the next.
nothing natural. That's a larger one, close up.
Yeah.
X marks the spot.
So hold on, let me just
Go on.
tie you down here, Alan, if I
Yeah,
may.
by all means, go ahead.
Is this where the Ark of the Covenant is?
Yes, in our opinion, yes, and I'll tell you why. On the north side,
Okay, I think we can lose that now.
there are 5 depressions which are ball-shaped in the earth, and there are pits in them
Yes.
full of white stones.
Okay, chalk.
No, they're white stones, and the stones are actually brought from Cornwall. They're not found anywhere else. And the way of draining an underground chamber in Britain, they had to drain it because of British conditions, was a sump in the bottom of the pit of the chamber,
Yeah.
leading down to a pit full of white stones, which is in a ball-shaped depression. So the water would come down out of the chamber, seep out, and drift away. It wouldn't flood out.
Okay.
And there are 5 of these, and that they are nothing else other than ancient drains. They are. We know that.
So this mound
It's got 5 ancient drains on the north side, and there's signs of tunnelling. You can see the lines on the bottom there?
Yes.
Well, we thought, a friend of ours said, one of those tram lines. I thought, hey, well, it can only be one thing. And there's stones thrown out of a tunnel, and when they tumble down the hill in the straight.
Right, of course.
And there's signs of tunnelling there. Now, what we did, we got ground penetration radar, which we're not very good at working, so we need a better person to have a go with that.
Geophys, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's another thing. And we also have this wonderful metal detector of ours, you see? And we put that on it, and with the farmer's permission, of course.
Of course.
And it's obviously man-made. And bingo, we've got an object there, 4 feet long, 2 feet wide, and it's non-ferrous metal.
But it is metal.
Oh, it's metal. No,
So
no. I
in
mean,
that
the
mound-
machine goes bzzz,
So deep
and then
in
if
that-
it hits metal, it goes bing, bing, bing.
So
you know?
deep in that mound,
We don't know how deep it is.
but we know it's not near the surface.
Not near the surface.
Deep in that mound, then, is a metal object, which is non-ferrous metal,
Yeah.
which is the shape and size that the Ark is supposed to be as described in the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, so many
Yeah.
cubits by so
On
many...
a place which could be the place of... It's definitely the place
in
of
a place
worship, the
named
enclosure of the
as
ark.
the enclosure of the Ark. Well, it's, you know, it's quite a revelatory show, this, isn't it?
It's good stuff.
We found the graves of
Well, we did
2 King Arthurs.
Yeah, we did one other thing. Again, as you get to the gap in the wall, you walk up the side of the mound, you get on the north side, you get to a gap in the wall to go through, and you can still see the mound going on ahead, above you, you know? So you've got a bit of climbing to do. A friend of ours put the cursor on with Google Earth.
Oh, yes,
and he
Google
got to
Earth.
that spot, and it was 902 feet. And as he moved it across, he should go up 60 feet. It didn't. It stayed at 902 feet, 903.
So it doesn't show the modern, the stuff that's man-made. It doesn't
Yeah.
show the...
So we had a conference, you know, them in Cardiff, us up here in Newcastle, and what to do. We both had Google Earth on, and I said, let's go to the Empire State Building in New York. So we're on the street. Now, when you get off the street, you go to the Empire State Building, you should go up 1,200 feet. It didn't. It went down 60 feet. It's showing the cellar.
Into the cellar.
We did the...
Alan,
Good.
we're going to go for another break now. Once again, if you'd like to text in your questions or comments to
Yeah.
Alan Wilson, why not do so now? Just text 87778 with the word EDGE, and then your text, and we'll see you back here very soon for more exciting stuff.
You enjoyed it?
Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest, Alan Wilson. Alan, we've touched on some amazing stuff, all of which you claim to have evidence for, and you say that a lot of this evidence has been there for a very, very long time, but has been ignored by mainstream academics. Would you be prepared to open yourself up to academia and let them come and talk to you and see your evidence and, you know, perhaps...
I'd like nothing better. Absolutely. I mean, no, we're not a closed shop. The door is open, wide open. I'll do it live on TV if you want. I mean...
Because it seems to me
the
that,
door's wide open.
You know, this history, if you like, of the British people is so fascinating, so new, isn't it? I mean, in terms of, you know, just the tourist industry.
Well, we met Lord Jack Brooks many years ago in the House of Lords, telling him what we're doing. And we hadn't got as far along the line as we are now. And he said, if you're right, there's 20,000 jobs in this. And he then explained there would be restaurants, cafes, taxi drivers, coach trips, hotels, and all that, you know.
Yeah.
And making doodads. I mean, if you've got a tourist industry, you make the doodads in Britain. You don't make them in Hong Kong and bring them here, right? We think that we could create about 30,000 jobs down there. And the thing about a tourist job, it's not like a factory that can be uprooted and taken to Bulgaria or something. It's there permanently.
Of course it is,
ever go away. If I was them, I'll tell you what I would do. I'd get into this, and I would set up a statue. You know the Statue of Liberty?
Yes.
Or that's an icon. You've got the Eiffel Tower. You've got the statue of Jesus on the Sugarloaf Mountain in Rio, right?
Okay.
Everybody sees it, say Rio, Paris. Right? I'd build a gigantic statue of Arthur with a sword upraised.
Which Arthur? One or two?
It doesn't matter. Me, if you like, right? You know what I mean?
I do know.
I would create an icon like that, and I would get into this history positively and exploit it. No, we've never touched a site that we find.
No, you haven't dug for the Ark, have you?
No.
But actually, somebody's texted in here. They said it might be a bad idea to state where there is metal buried. Even if it is the Ark, some people might dig it up for scrap metal.
Oh, come on.
Well, they might dig it up just to find the Ark.
There's a guy breeds dogs down the end of the hill. There's a sort of park ranger guy who's responsible for seeing the countryside is all in one order. On the other side, there are 2 farmhouses that side and a manor house. Oh, yeah, they all know.
They know?
And we told them.
That the Ark is there.
We've told them. We know, above board. We're always above board with farmers. And, you know, we never tell them anything but the truth.
But surely they must be interested in finding it.
Can they believe it? He's busy. They're busy farming sheep, and you come along and say this. I mean, you know?
Yes, you're sitting on top of the Ark of the Covenant. That is that's going to make your day, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're fairly open-minded, but I think they would, as we would, welcome academic participation. And we'd welcome it. I have no bones about it. We did try to... We got somebody in the astronomy department of Cardiff University very interested in this, the modes and the mirror. And he went to the history department and he went to the archaeologists and said, look, how about getting involved with this, you know? And they wouldn't.
They wouldn't because...
they said they'd been sort of a bust-up with us. There's never been a bust-up. We never spoke with them. How do you have a bust-up with somebody you don't talk to?
I suppose because your research is so out of line with their accepted history of Britain that they don't want to face that.
Prove us wrong.
Well, but there is a challenge. OK, academics, if you're watching, or if you're watching this in repeat, prove Alan wrong.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'd be delighted.
Well, you know, there are 25 histories of Helen of the Cross. That's the mother of Constantine the great empress, wife of Constantine Chlorus, emperor. And, she goes to Sinai with a couple of legions, footsteps of Moses. She went to Jerusalem, 325, 326 AD, and she said, give me the cross. I want it. And, of course, there was a...
This is the cross of Jesus you're talking about now.
This is the cross that Jesus is nailed on, you see. Okay. Well, after a lot of torture and one thing or the other, she gets this piece of timber. She makes the nails into a bridle bit for her son's horse, Constantine the Great. Sends that to Constantinople, which he's building.
Which
and
is
she
now
realizes
Istanbul,
she realizes he wants this. Now, she's British, you see. So she gets in her ships and she sails back to the UK. Mm-hmm. And this is recorded in the Exeter book, and Anglo-Saxon is recorded in 25 different histories. So the cross is in the UK.
Okay.
When Edward I killed Llewellyn the Last in North Wales, he demanded that he'd hand over the cross to him. They said, we can't.
Hold on, I think we need to backtrack a little bit on there, Alan.
So anyway, the point, is...
Hold on a second. So you're saying that part of the cross that Christ was crucified on...
that's what they're saying then. I don't know it's genuine, but that's what she thought.
But this is in the histories, you're saying?
It's in histories, and it's in the UK. So we said, let's go and look for it. It's a logical thing.
There's no stopping you, is there, Alan?
So, wait a minute. There's actually a record written around 920 and recopied about 1100 saying where it is.
Where the cross is?
Yeah. It says that's where it is.
OK, so
now,
where is it?
what could be easier?
Where is that?
It's in West Wales.
It's in West Wales. That's a bit of a broad palette, isn't it?
Well, how much you want to know. Again, you've got a star pattern down there, and... people who buy yourself a star map or a little star map, you'll see Cygnus the swan.
Yes.
Well, Cygnus the swan is the shape of a cross. It's a cross in some. There's two outlying, one big one, and one big one down here, 7. So we know that that's marking the cross area. Now,
so they've made mounds on the ground.
Now down there, there's the castle of the Great Helen in Welsh. It's a ruined castle.
Where's that then?
In West Wales, you know, Newport area.
Newport, Gwent.
Newport, Pembrokeshire.
Pembrokeshire.
North Cardigan.
OK.
There's the Castle of Great Helen, the Ridge, Kevin Bannon, the Ridge of the Empress, the River of the Empress, Avon Bannon, the River of the Sanctuary, and so on. And I said to Richard Wire, a mate of us down, I said, can you get up on Carningley, the highest spot there, you know, get a telescope or something, and see if you can find anything down the centre line of the cross, you know, these things. You mark it on a map, you can see where you are. And he went up and he phoned us, he said, there's a strange pile of big white stones in a field. Well, these big white stones, they must cover about 20 yards by about 5 or 6 now, but they appear to have been laid out in a bolt shape, which is early Christian in Wales anyway. And they're the size of this desk nearly. They're whacking big stones.
Well, each one is the size of this?
Yes! They're half the size, some of them.
Yeah.
Now, the only place you can get those whacking big stones of that type is 7 miles away. So someone's brought them up onto this low hill. So
they've done it for a serious purpose then, haven't they?
That's right. And we found that there was a depression, looked like a track going, or a tunnel or something, going down about 200 yards down this hill slope to where the road levels out, and the road outside the field. Down there, the farmer took us along, and there was a large round stone, like a millstone, there. And we rolled it aside, and there was a little porch built of stone. And this thing seemed to come from these white stones, a diagonal line, you see, down the slope. So we got a JCB, and we cut across this line. And someone in antiquity has dug it. You get a layer of earth on a Welsh hill so much, and then you get a bit of a roof shale, and then you get more solid rocks and stones. In this case, someone had dug a trench 7 feet deep and 5 feet wide, 200 yards down the hill. They'd put all the big stones in the bottom, and then all the loose stuff on the top. In other words, it's a perfect way to create a drain in an old field.
Another drain.
And so they're draining they're draining the water away from whatever is under the white stones. We think Helen's buried there. So we've done this sort of research, and again, nobody wants to join with us. As for the Ark, again, the cross, we've put on the site, we've put a metal detector, and it shows up an object 4 to 4.5 feet long, and about 1 foot by 1 foot, non-ferrous metal. So
you think you found the cross as well, or part of the cross?
Well,
as Helen has adorned it.
I don't know if it's genius or what, but it's a matter of applying techniques that you use in industry to historical analysis.
And you have spent over 30 years doing this, haven't you?
And
seriously.
The thing is, the trick is you read the records instead of discarding them. They've thrown the baby out and kept the bathwater.
Okay.
You read the records. Right. And you say, this is a genuine record, what is in it?
OK, I'm going to read out a couple of texts.
Go ahead.
Mandy in Marcross in Wales. Do you know Marcross?
Yeah.
She says, is there a Palace of the Kings in Glamorgan?
Yes. Now, 652 AD, a comet struck Britain.
We haven't talked about the comet, have we?
It devastated the whole of Britain, and much of Britain the people were destroyed and killed. The remnant, you couldn't enter the devastated lands for 6, 7 to 11 years. The army was taken over to Brittany and waited, and Arthur was over in Brittany, Arthur II. Comet devastated Britain. This was written out of the history books. You see, the Angles and Saxons then moved in from Germany into empty lands. That's how all the Roman towns and Roman-style towns and cities in Britain were devastated. Now, when we started saying this, of course, there's an uproar. But Professor Michael Bailey of Queen's College, Belfast, he noted that he's a dendrochronologist, trees. He noted that all the forests of Britain and Ireland were devastated at this time.
And what was the year?
He thought it was 535, but we said 562.
Hold on, can we... There is a map of the world with the line on it where this comet went. If we can find that picture. I'm not sure where it is from my list. If we could find that and show it.
That's all right. Anyway, the point is that you couldn't say that debris from a comet had hit planet Earth because the church had gone nuts. The Roman church, no stone could fall from Earth, on the Earth from the skies, you see. It wasn't until 1803 when strikes of comets all over France, they had to admit.
And this is the path of the comet?
Now, what's happening now, in Bolivia, scientists from the University of South Pennsylvania, the Chicago Museum, and Austin University in Texas are all over Bolivia. And what has happened, and they've got a pretty good date on this, they say 562, Bolivia was devastated by debris from a comet.
So this is where it landed then, in Bolivia?
The land was uninhabitable for about 7 to 11 years, identical. The pyramids, the made of mud brick, the palaces, the towns, the walls, the cities, everything was destroyed. And the only survivors had to move down to the coast to survive. Identical story in Britain, identical story in Bolivia. Same time.
So you're saying that this comet passed over Britain, over Wales, caused a huge amount of devastation, and then carried on across the Atlantic. It
devastated parts of Ireland, and Bailey has noted Irish sort of ancient records. So it did happen. Gregory of Tours, The History of Franks, mentions how both islands, that's Ireland and Britain, were set on fire from end to end and destroyed. And the date is again right. So that's Arthur, the destruction of Arthur's Britain. And now in the medieval romances you get the great wastelands where it's death to enter, the great wastelands. And we searched for evidence in place names to see if we can do something about that. But this destruction of Britain by a comet, that's why you see, the archaeologists were saying at one time, 100 odd years ago, population of Britain in Caesar's time, 500,000. Then it became 1 million. Then they crept up to 2 million. And then it got to be, over the years, they're taking aerial photographs now, which they couldn't do before. It's up to 8 to 9 million now. This is a very big, powerful country. And this is how the British king could invade Gaul.
Well, we've got a picture of the palace excavations, haven't we, somewhere?
Yeah. But no, the palace of the kings is just outside Lampeter Major.
Ah, right.
It covers about 4 or 5 acres. The walls stick up from under the ground. They started excavating about 1903. I
don't know if we can find those pictures of the palace, can we?
Well, I'll tell you what number they are if you want.
Well, I can...
Right.
Same.
British city of
15.
12, 12, 14, go 12.
Oh, yeah, I think this is 15 we've got 12, here, isn't
it? There you got it. It's in the field. They were excavating 1903, and men in suits arrived. That means people from London, and stopped the excavation.
So we've got an ancient palace in Wales, and instead of excavating it, as you'd expect scientists to want to do, it's been
incredible. Anywhere else on planet Earth, they've been excavating it. It's the Palace of the Kings.
I think there's an aerial shot, isn't there?
Yeah, one room is
between
15.
12 and 15. There's about 4. Oh.
That's Trajan Gilbert there taking photographs.
Okay.
One of the rooms is 50 feet long and so wide. They tried to say it was destroyed in 293 when Charon or Carausius was killed, but it's no radio jab and dating. It's on end of the Arthurian kingdom, 652.
So let's look at that number 12. Oh, there we go. This is a.
There you can see it there.
There's the palace in the middle. This is this ancient palace of the kings of...
Bits of marble all over the place. I got a piece the size of one of those books, marble, I brought from there. So where they brought marble from, I don't know. Apparently, the bit they excavated, there are mosaics on the floors and murals on the walls.
Wow. So, and it's not Roman?
No, it's the British king. Now, there's also the buried city of Archaeological. That is in a field, right on target. You can see the lines of the streets if you go there. And they persuaded the owner not to ever, keep... a buried city in Britain? If they found one in Egypt, they'd be going bananas. Wouldn't they?
It does beg a belief, doesn't it? It does beg a belief. I've got to say, you've presented a huge amount of data, and I think it's just absolutely vital that some people perhaps should take notice of it.
I think the government has to step in.
Yeah.
You see, they're protecting institutional reputations.
Yeah.
The university doesn't want to be long. They went digging up Somerset instead of North Cardiff, and oh my God,
Well, Mandy's text back and she said, "Where is the Palace in Glamorgan?" I think that you said it was Llantwit Major, wasn't it?
Llantwit Major, yeah.
But
it's just north of Llantwit Major.
Just north of Llantwit Major. Okay.
The main road, you go along the main road if you're coming from the west, and a little side road ducks under the railway track. And if you get a big enough, get Google Earth, you'll find it. What we could do is perhaps read out sometime, we'll get you to read out the Google Earth reference. They can go smack onto it.
Well, unless we got it today, it'll be a different program.
Well, if they email me, I'll give them the references.
Okay.
That's the easy way to do it.
Well, you can email you on your website.
Yeah, so we've got a buried city under Archaeological, the hill where St. Peter's Church went after the second, and nobody's doing anything about it. Anywhere else on planet Earth, they'd be digging it up. And a buried palace of the kings.
Okay, all right. We're also going to put something on the forum on the Edge Media website, edgemediatv.com, how to contact Alan. So if you are interested in doing that, you will be able to do that through the forum. So, Alan, we've talked about a huge, mind-blowing selection of archaeological and investigatory facts that you've unearthed. One of the things we haven't touched upon that much is ancient Egypt and the writings there. Do you want to quickly... Well, you've got 7 minutes left.
The reason people went out with interest in Egypt originally was to try and find evidence of Moses and Jacob and Joseph and that sort of thing. That was the real interest. They were biblical hunters.
Yes.
They didn't find anything. They couldn't. The reason they haven't found it is the Velikovsky affair raising its head again. Velikovsky said there are duplications in ancient Egyptian history. The duplications are causing the history to be stretched.
There's hundreds of years of blank in Egyptian history.
Well, in other histories, certainly. This then, by relating every event like a treaty or a war or whatever, or intermarriage of royal families with other countries, all the other histories are in disarray because they think history in Egypt is correct and it's dislocating everybody else. 5 archaeologists, professionals, wrote a book, Centuries of Darkness. Peter James the lead. Brilliant book, should have been applauded. Professor Lord Renfrew wrote the preface and so on. And they say how every country, they go one after the other around the Med, is in, 500 years of Greek history are missing. Trojan War ends, nothing happens for 500 years. Rip Van Winkle blows the horn, they all wake up and start living. It's crazy. The same in Turkey and the same elsewhere. And things are dislocated. And the problem, they say, the core of the problem is Egypt. You can't find Moses because the evidence is being dated to 2400 BC.
And he wasn't that long ago?
1300.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Moses was more recent.
You can't find Joseph and Jacob because they're dating him from 1600 BC to about 2500 BC. You can't find the Queen of Sheba, same problem. What they're doing is this. They get a carbon dating. Let's say they get a carbon date for Ramesses II, and it's 2,600 years. 2,000 years of our era, 600 BC. Oh my God. He's got to be 1,200. They divide by 80 and multiply by 100. Bingo, 1,250 BC.
What, you mean they ignore the carbon dating?
They apply formula and they calibrate. So when they get Nitocris or Nicole, you look for her. See what we did, we looked for the names of people. Now in 8 ancient things, the Kebra, Nagas, the Koran, and the Queen of Sheba's Nicole or Nitocris, we look for Nitocris. You find her. They're misdating her by over 500 years, 450. But if you apply the formula to her date that you get carbon dating, You divide by 80, multiply by 100. Oh, you get there. Just
so you're saying,
cheating.
You're saying the carbon dating is right,
and
but the academics won't accept it because they go, oh, that must be wrong.
There's no why don't they multiply by 50 and divide by 200? Why don't they multiply by 40 and divide by 37? You know, why do it? They're cheating. If they were in any business, right, they'd be in jail looking through bars for cooking the books. And they're doing it. They've always done it.
So we've got 4 minutes nearly left. So, Alan, in that 4 minutes, so you have decided through your research that the carbon dating is correct.
Yes.
That you can
there's no need to mess with
telescope in the history of Egypt, so you know where to look for the hieroglyphs that talk about Moses. Did you find Moses?
Yes, there are long texts about Moses. Yeah, they call Musef, M-W-S-E-F-F.
Okay, so this was in hieroglyphs, though.
Yeah, it means he of the basket.
He of the basket. Well, that pretty well sums it up, doesn't it?
Well, see, what they've done, they've got a guy who is not royal, but who's married to a royal princess, and he has the biggest tomb complex in Egypt. A commoner married to a princess. And this is this guy, Musef.
This is Moses.
They're putting him at 2,400 BC.
But why is he buried in Egypt? Didn't he lead the Israelites out
of... The tomb is empty.
Oh, right.
They built their tombs ready. They started building a tomb as soon as they could, because they did take years to build. They wanted it ready for when they were off to the
Did they use the tomb for somebody else?
No, well, they couldn't, because his name and his wife's name, Egyptian princess, all over it.
Well, Ramesses II was famous for cutting off everybody else's cartouche and putting his own on there, wasn't he?
Well, this is the way to...
I'm surprised he didn't nick Moses too.
Yeah, well,
he had a better one.
I'll tell you about Ramesses some other time. It's more interesting than you think, but there we are.
I'm sure it will be.
But the evidence... See, there's a huge argument going on in academia. Professor Thompson of Copenhagen said all the ancient patriarchs in the Bible, Jewish patriarchs, starting with Abraham and Moses and the whole lot of them, are all fictional characters. They're folklore, fairy tale characters. None of them existed. Because the archaeologists can't find any evidence.
Because they're not looking in the right place.
Yeah, they're 50-50 split. The evidence is there, they're misdating it. And they're doing it deliberately. Oh, it's comic. If it had teeth, it would bite them. It is comic, isn't it?
Well, we've certainly thrown out a challenge here, haven't we, tonight, Alan?
We've written... You see, I got 2 hours with you. Thank you very much for every second of it.
Great pleasure.
But we've got 9 large books written over 30 years, so it's hard to cover in...
And these are available where? In Amazon?
Buy them off me on Amazon.
Buy them off Alan on his website.
Amazon.
And I'm going to steal these ones tonight.
You have a job.
I'll arm wrestle you for them.
You lose.
I'm going to read this out. Absolutely brilliant. Theo and Alan, keep up the good work. Stephen in London. Thank you, Stephen. Much appreciated.
Well,
so you've got 30 seconds, Alan. What would you like to say?
I would like the government to take note and create the jobs, and I would like academia to come on board and work with us. And that would do the whole thing. But I don't want any favours. We never look for one.
No. You just want your work to be...
Yeah. I would like it to be acknowledged, and I would like it to be taken advantage of, because I'm a working-class background. I want to see people in jobs. If I thought I could create 30,000 jobs, that's terrific.
Yeah.
And my colleague would feel the same.
Well, I'd certainly pay to go and see the Ark of the Covenant and where it's buried in an ancient British palace. And
if it's there... The owner of the land gets 50% the value, and I get 50% for saying it's there.
As the founder, as the finder.
Thank you.
Alan, that's all we've got time for. Thank you to everyone for watching our special 2-hour show, and for those who texted, and thanks to my very special guest, Alan Wilson. If you've enjoyed this show, please tell all your friends. Next week, we'll be back with another exciting show that might even change your life. Until then, remember, they're watching you, watching us, watching them. Cheerio.